Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Ned Dennison. I'm the chairperson of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. And we have with us today Britta Kamrau from Germany. Britta, please say hello.
Hello. I'm very happy to be here.
I'll give you a very short biography of Britta's marathon swimming. She won 6 majors, which is a big deal. 2003 and 2006 FINA Marathon Swimming World Series, 2002 and 2004 10K, and 2004 25K FINA World Swimming Championships, and 2007 25K FINA World Championships. She won more than 25 FINA World Cup and Grand Prix races at European and World Championship races at 10K and 25. She won silvers in 2003 and 2005 in the World Championships 25K. She continued to contribute to the sport after her marathon swimming career to give back to the sport, which is what we'll discuss today. The sport does not function without the involvement, commitment of tens of thousands of contributors around the world, whether they be administrators, coaches, organizations, pilots, historians, writers, etc. So please, if you've not done your contributing yet, please sign up to help with somebody somewhere. Many honorees have contributed to FINA over the years, and in some cases, they've contributed longer than Britta. The motivation to interview Britta today was driven by her recent involvement in the FINA World Championships. So Britta, when did your swimming career end?
I did stop in 2009 with my active career of swimming, yes.
And you almost immediately started working with FINA? Yes,
exactly, immediately. I stopped swimming, and I think like a month later, I was on the FINA Athletes Committee. Yeah.
And help people understand what FINA is in very broad terms.
Well, it's a very complex entity. No, well, it is, of course, the ruling world federation for all 6 aquatics disciplines, which is swimming, diving, high diving, synchronized swimming, artistic swimming now, open water, and water polo. So it's the head over those 6 disciplines. And well, all the major events are under the FINA flag, World Championships. Through FINA, you get into the Olympic Games. So it is, well, the federation for all aquatic sports.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your involvement in FINA over the years. I think start with the Reform Committee, which I find quite interesting.
Well, yeah, that's actually one of my latest tasks, though. As I was saying, I've been on the Athletes Committee since 2009 until this year, actually, until the World Championships in Budapest this summer. Now well, a new Athletes Committee was elected, so I'm no longer on the Athletes Committee, but it's really fine like that. I mean, I'm getting older, and I am not so close to the active career anymore. So it's time for others to take over the job. And well, we had a new FINA president. We have a new FINA president from June 2021, and he wanted to do a lot of things different than the years before that. So he installed a reform committee and asked me to be on it. So I had the honor to work on the reform committee for more than a year now, and it's of course very important. And as I was saying, I'm really honored to be on that committee and to be able to contribute and to put in the perspective of the athlete, which of course I still have. It's a lot of areas actually. Those reforms at the moment. We're still working on changes of the Constitution for the Congress in December 2022 in Melbourne to vote on those changes. Already in the Congress, in the extraordinary Congress, it was voted to implement an aquatics integrity unit, which is a very important unit, of course, to fulfill those goals that the new president had, and that, of course, are in the interest of all athletes and members of FINA to have integrity, transparency, no corruption. So we will have this independent integrity unit, and that's just a small part of the reforms and all the work done already. Of course, not only by me, but by a lot of people within FINA and within the reform committee.
And you were at the recent World Championships. What was your role? Were you a referee? Were you an official? Were you a broadcaster? Were you all of these things?
Well, I was there in my role still as a member of the athletes committee. I was the vice chair of the athletes committee, and at the same time, because for the last 5 years now, of each discipline, one representative of the athletes committee is at the same time a member of the technical committee. So me as a representative for open water swimming, I was also the athletes representative on the technical open water swimming committee. So I always had those two roles, double roles, which was my role, of course, at those World Championships too. But then I'm around the competitions, of course. I'm in the meetings with the TOSC. We make sure that everything is in order, that the competition goes according to FINA rules. And well, during the races, I did actually the commentating, the English announcing and commentating at the venue for the spectators and people there. So I've done that for quite a few times already now. So that's what I was doing in Budapest. But as I was saying, I'm not on the athletes committee anymore, but I'm now a regular member of the TOSC, of the FINA Technical Open Water Swimming Committee. So from now on, I will be able to actually be like a referee, a judge during the races, because until now I haven't done that, because of course, if you are the representative of the athletes, it's a little bit difficult to put you in the races as a judge or referee. There can be conflicts of interest, of course.
Okay. You mentioned the athletes committee. And over the last few years, certainly honorees such as Petr Strojčev, Melissa Cunningham, and now Anna Marcela Cunha and Ferry Vertman are on this committee, and probably more. What does this committee do, and how big is it?
Well, we had a lot of changes this summer, actually. Well, when I got on the athletes committee in 2009, it was actually I got on it thanks to Petr Strojčev. He was the open water representative on the committee, and then FINA was saying, okay, we need female and male athletes in each discipline. So he proposed me to be on the committee, and that's how I actually got in, thanks to him. But when we started, it was really more like, how to say, we met like once a year, and that was about it. We just talked in a meeting, put on some goals on the paper, and gave that paper to FINA office or FINA bureau to talk about it. But that was about it. But during this time, it's been 13 years that I was on the committee. It changed really a lot. The voice of the athletes got a lot bigger. We could achieve a lot more. We would sit, as I was saying, in the meetings of the technical committees, which is one of the most important places where we do our work, because that's where they work on the rules, on the regulations, on the things that are important to each discipline, to develop each discipline. And Peter and me, we were always sitting on the meetings of the TOSC. We were invited by the TOSC even before they had to. And at least in open water, it was a really nice work with the members of the TOSC. They would always listen to us. They would always appreciate our athletes' perspective we could bring in. So that's where we did most of our work. And of course, if you are so many years in there, it helps to get the network, to get people to know of the bureau, of the other deciding bodies within FINA, to, well, just talk, and it's not even the official meetings where you achieve a lot of things, but, just meeting around the events and well, talk about things that are important. And we could develop not only good relationship to the technical committees, but also to the sports medicine committee, a little bit to the coaches committee. So swimming approval committee, talking about the wetsuits in open water, for example. So, well, a little bit here and there, but in the whole, it's a lot of things you do and a lot of things you can achieve. And actually, in these years I was on, we could achieve that the chair of the athletes committee would be a full voting member on the bureau. That wasn't before like that. That's since 2017. So we have actually a very important voice on the bureau. And we also have 7 votes in the Congress, which is, of course, the highest, most important organ of the FINA. And we are the only committee, the only body from within FINA with votes on the Congress, because, of course, it's the national federations voting, and each national federation has 2 votes. The athletes committee has 7. So that's quite a lot we could achieve through those during those years that I was on the committee.
So in those years, you mentioned wetsuits. I presume you would have been an active participant in this discussion of wetsuits are mandatory for temperatures below a certain level.
Well, if I am honest, if I would have been still a swimmer, I would have argued in a different way, because I hated cold water. And for me, cold water is everything below 24 degrees. So I would have been really happy even with this optional degrees within 18 and 20 degrees, where you can or cannot swim with a wetsuit. And I know that the majority of the athletes is not happy with that rule. So I'm, of course, representing the athletes and not me. Well, I don't need to represent me anymore. But, well, of course, you always try to get the majority of the voices and everything. You cannot do it right for everybody. Of course, you cannot. And you cannot achieve everything either. That's something I learned getting into FINA, getting into the committees. It's always very easy to complain, right? If you're an athlete, it's easy to complain, but to make things actually better, to see what you need to do to get things done, to see what the limits are, is something very important. And of course, it's sometimes very difficult to understand that if you're an athlete living in your athlete bubble.
I guess the important thing for me is people ask me about this rule. And I say to them, it was not somebody sitting behind a desk in Switzerland who all of a sudden decided on a temperature. These were long and complicated discussions involving some of the superstar athletes of the sport and the administrators who had been involved for 2 decades. These were tough, difficult decisions. And they were made for all sorts of reasons, but primarily for the health of the athletes.
Yes, of course. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, we've had incidents that you don't want to have. And that's the reason. There have been medical studies, there have been task forces. And of course, if you do two studies, you get 2 different results, and people are different. There are people like me really suffering with less than 20 degrees. And there are others that can swim 14 degrees and they don't have a problem. And of course, you have to try to protect everybody. And then the safety of the athlete is always more important than anything else, right?
I say to solo swimmers, I say, yes, you can swim in 12-degree water. But you need to remember that these elite athletes are swimming at 4.5, 5+ kilometers an hour. They are swimming at a pace you can't imagine. And it's in some ways, it's a very different experience and a very different safety issue. As a solo swimmer, you can stop and say, okay, it's time, give me a half a liter of really warm liquid, and I'm going to take my time and I'm going to drink it. When you're an elite athlete, you're swimming in and you're taking 2 seconds to grab
exactly.
a small drink. It's very different safety concerns.
Yes, and of course you have the pressure, like to get your points, to get your positions in the World Cups, to not lose a race. So can be tough.
It's not about finishing. It's about finishing high. You mentioned
Exactly.
the technical open water committee. Certainly some of our honorees, Ronnie Wong, Sid Cassidy, Chris Keyston, Dennis Miller, Dale Petronich, Stephen Munatonis, and many others have been on these committees. We're going to try to assemble a list in the coming weeks for the future, so we don't lose this history. Tell us what this committee does, what they control.
Well, you actually need a little bit of time to work on the committee to have the time. Well, of course, we start with the meetings, and as I was saying, we work on the rules. We propose rules to the technical congress, the rule amendments if we see that it's needed. Well, we propose it, of course, first to the bureau, and then the bureau decides on it and what is going to be proposed to the technical congress. We take care of those things, like you were saying, safety of the athletes, the competitions, that they work well, that they have, good venues, that everything is in order at the venues. At each FINA competition, there are delegates of the FINA, of the TOSC. There's always a safety delegate, just taking care about all the safety issues. And then you have the general delegate who's, working together with the local organizing committee to put everything in order. If it's bigger events, or the other members of the committees, they work as referee and judges during the races. They also take care, they make clinics for ITOs, NTOs to be officials, to be referees, judges, also educating coaches and doing some learning programs, which of course is one of the goals that FINA has to not only focus on the elite sport, but to have a broad, all over the world, make it possible for children to get to learn to swim, to do the sport, not on a high level, but just learn swimming. There are a lot of programs of that, and the members of the technical committees, they are involved in those programs as well. So
when 15 elite swimmers try to make a right-hand turn around a big yellow buoy, there's likely to be contact.
Yeah.
And this technical committee is trying to lay out the rules for what contact is absolutely outlawed, what contact is normal part of contact, and then to educate a set of officials and appeals processes and everything else.
Exactly. Yes.
I would say to solo swimmers, he said, watch a basketball game, which you'll understand, or a football match, that'd be soccer for Americans. And when the center gets the ball and there's contact, was it a charge? Was it a foul? Was it incidental? And in football, when the player is inside the penalty box and there's a tackle, is it normal? Is it a penalty shot? Is it ejection? What is it in those situations? None of them are easy. And these sports spend decades refining these rules and changing these rules to try to get a reasonable balance. And open water swimming is very much the same. Britta, you're also involved in the German Swimming Federation. Tell us about that. And I guess one of the things I want everybody to understand is that, while English is a language used in a lot of international settings, it's not the language of the world. So you're probably using English in the technical open water swimming committee, but when you're working in the German Federation, I'm guessing you're working in German.
Yes, we do. Yeah, well, the German name is actually Deutscher Schwimmverband, which means German Swimming Federation. Deutscher Schwimmverband. Yeah, I'm the presiding arbitrator at the National Sports Arbitration Tribunal of the German Swimming Federation. So that's my involvement with the German Federation. I don't have too many cases, which is good. You don't need to. Also, of course, it was a tough time. The COVID pandemic, not so many competitions, so you have less conflicts too. But of course, then being in FINA, you also need to be linked to your federation. So if you want to get into FINA, the best way always to get into is through your national federation. So it is, of course, always good to be involved with the federation, or to at least have a good contact, so you're supported by the national federation. And but at the same time, of course, you have to take care that you don't have too many places where your work is needed. I work full time in my real life. I have 3 kids and a family. So sometimes it gets actually tough to have the time, because of course I want to do those tasks well as well. So sometimes less is better, higher quality, not to be too busy.
I will describe you as the chief judge. Are you covering all the aquatic disciplines for the German Federation?
Well, yeah, it can be, but actually, you have the 3 levels of the tribunals, and most of the cases are actually in the 1st and 2nd one, and I'm the 3rd one. So it's the less number of cases that actually get to where I am. So most of them are in the, Germany is a federal state. You have all those, every state you have a swimming federation, a small one, and they take care first of the cases until they get to the next level.
So help us, give us some examples of these kinds of disputes or cases. I think everyone's familiar with doping cases, which typically are going through WADA. I don't know if that's your area at all. We're familiar with the Olympics, where looks like somebody spent too much time underwater on the breaststroke turn, and an official puts up a flag. What kind of cases come up in a national federation?
It's exactly what you say. It can be a disqualification in swimming. It can be, giving points or not in water polo. The penalties they get in the water polo game, the same in diving or artistic swimming. It can be very different. Everything that is within the competition rules, when something is, you get disqualified by a referee, and you cannot do whatever, or about starting rights. Someone is starting for a club but is supposed to start for another club. Can be things like that. But as you were saying, doping is not one of the things in there, because it goes through WADA. In FINA too, it's not FINA, not anymore deciding on doping cases. From now on, they will be going to CAS, so they are outsourced too. So you have more neutral bodies deciding over those cases.
So I was ejected in 1980 for 45 seconds in a water polo game for looking at the referee in a bad way. Do you think it's still possible for me to appeal that?
I doubt it. I think it might be too long ago.
I did look at the referee in a bad way, but I didn't think it was against the rules at the time. But I was out for 45 seconds. What are you most proud of the last 13 years of your FINA involvement?
Well, as I was saying, the things we achieved in the athletes committee, of course, not me alone, but the committee as a team. You have to be a team to be able to, and we really had a very good chair, Penny Haynes from South Africa. She was the best chair of the athletes committee, and she had a very good way to not only to lead the committee as athletes, but also to bring the things onto the table and to get them through in the bureau. And what I was saying, those the voting chair in the bureau, the 7 votes in the Congress. I was also able to work with the legal committee on the new rules, the new regulations for the athletes committee, because from this summer on in Budapest was the first time that the members of the athletes committee were actually elected by the peers, by the other athletes. Until then, it was always through appointment of the national federations and the bureau. So, of course, it could give place to doubts of corruption or whatever. So now it's the athletes voting, and I was for about 2 years working on those regulations together with the legal committee. So that was important too. And I was saying at the beginning, of course, I'm very happy to be able to still be there contributing, and especially being there in the reform committee, actually working on the development and the reforms that, of course, are very important and good for the sport and also for the image of FINA.
That's interesting, because one of the criticisms of FINA for the past couple of decades, it was a very closed organization, ruled strongly from the top. So this difference between appointments to the Athletes Commission, where you don't really know how it works, versus elections. So Anna and Ferry have now been voted by their peers to be on the Athletes Commission, and there can be literally, unless somebody cheated on the voting, which I don't think, there's no question that they earned their places. And in the next vote, if somebody wants to be on the Athletes Committee, they say, I want to be on the ballot. So these are the kinds of reforms that probably FINA needed to do for some time to make it more open and more transparent.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So your advice now for a world-class elite swimmer, I'll pick Italy and France because they seem to be doing so well these days, as they're coming to the end of their international swimming career. The best way for them to stay involved is to connect locally and try to connect as well with FINA in some various role.
Yes, that's what I would say, exactly. Yes. Okay.
And
of course, you have to be actually willing to work, because sometimes people think all those people, they just sit on the committees, they go to world championships, they have nice travels, first class, and then they stay in nice hotels and they just don't do anything. Not true. It can be a lot of work. If you want to contribute, it can be a lot of work.
Okay. Britta, thank you very, very much for your time. And more than that, thank you very much for contributing to the sport after your elite career was over. Hopefully you'll be one of the role models for other swimmers in the future.
Thank you very much.
Bye.